I'm Lisa Reavers, University of Minnesota Master Gardener for Rice County, and we're doing our final episode for 2019. So there are quite a few things I want to just touch on to put your garden to bed. One of the things is a lot of people ask me during winter why the library does not clean this up. And the reason is that native pollinators that have actually mated and the queens need a place to live. And they know to go into the brush of all of the flowers that are left here. Now, the one thing that will be exempt from that is some of the milkweed here has aphids on it. So I'm just going to clear that foliage out because I just don't want to encourage anything in the soil. The other thing is, if you have a lot of annuals, when it gets cold out, the roots will actually explode, and that will leave nutrients into the soil. And I leave that just because I do want to see those nutrients released back into the soil. Now, be honest, how many times do you go and you clean out your flower gardens and then you come back and you put straw down on them? That is what this is supposed to be for. That's why I leave the foliage here as well. It's its own natural mulch. Instead of bringing in straw or hay, just leave the plants where they're at. And it's going to be a benefit for so many things. The birds are going to go and they're going to eat the seeds. I've got sunflowers in 2 of our gardens, and the finch are already eating the sunflowers off of those. So if I leave that up during the winter, they're going to have something to eat as they do their migration. Okay, and some of the other things, lacewings, assassin bugs, damsel bugs, ground beetles, all sorts of beneficial insects know that they can burrow into this and find shelter for the winter. So that is one of the big reasons why I leave it. Now, one of the other things you might have noticed if you walk up the main library entrance is I have turned some of the clover back into the soil, and I'm doing that because clover gets nitrogen from the air. So I'm actually taking nitrogen from the air that the clover has gotten, and I'm able to actually fertilize with that clover. So now we're at the vegetable garden for the library, and I'm starting to clean things out, and you're going to see that the cucumber vine is gone, and I will be cleaning up things sporadically throughout the next month. Now, this is the one area where you do not want to leave last year's growth, because most of the time tomatoes actually have blight that is airborne. Because I have some soilless tomato areas, straw bales, and that they didn't have blight when they first came, the straw bales. So during the course of the year, it has gotten blight from the air, and it has been so wet that other funguses and diseases have actually come into play here. So what I would advise, I actually use essential oils in the garden. So if you see me out spraying, I'm not spraying a chemical, I'm actually spraying a mixture of different essential oils to try and take care of some of the problems. Now, if you look over at the tomatoes, you see that they are in really, really bad shape as far as the plant itself. So what I'm going to do is we're going to get rid of all of the growth there, and then we're going to till in the straw. And yep, it might take some blight from any plant matter that might have been there. But then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to use some essential oil over the top of it so that I can cut down on any type of fungus, mildew that might settle in over the winter. So some of those that I use, tea tree oil is huge. That fights mold and fungus, and I had actually used that on the tomatoes earlier in the season when I thought we were getting too much rain, and it ended up, I didn't stay on top of it. You need to do this and do it as a preventative, so start spraying before you see anything. and I was gone for a week, it took hold and it just took over. So tea tree oil is a good one. Peppermint will actually repel ants, aphids, beetles, moths, and spiders. I don't use that necessarily out here during the growing season. I'm going to hit the garden probably with everything to get it ready for winter, so I'm going to do the tea tree. Basil actually helps support plant health, so I'm going to spray that on top. And that means I'm going to take all of this out and we're going to till it, because we've also had an invasion of Japanese beetles, and they actually burrow into the soil. After the female has mated, she burrows into the soil and buries her eggs. So I want to disrupt that cycle, and I kind of want to mess with those eggs, and I want to be able to get some essential oil on the eggs so that hopefully they won't end up hatching next year. You can find a lot of things on the internet. So if you were to Google oils for your vegetable garden, essential oils for your vegetable garden, you're going to find a lot of different information out there in what to use and what not to use. I also would stay away from anything that would repel caterpillars. And I know that people don't like the cabbage worm, or they don't want their dill to be munched on, but those eventually are going to be butterflies, and I'm a promoter of butterflies because they are a native pollinator. And we know about the decrease in monarchs going down to Mexico, so I'm going to do whatever I can to help that life cycle. So I'm going to be using some cedar wood that will actually repel slugs and snails. That doesn't have any problem with the caterpillar. If you weren't getting enough action from the pollinators in your garden, you might want to think about lavender. But again, that's going to be for next spring. And I would do that for next spring. Now, one of the other wonderful things about fall is being able to plant bulbs. And I've always considered that to be the gardening of hope, because you're putting these bulbs in the soil and you're hoping that they will make it through the winter and flower next spring. And that's always been a delightful thing for me. The other thing you might want to do during this time is look at some of your perennials and divide them out. Some of them do get too bushy, and if you decide that you wanted to get another area with possibly some black-eyed Susans or bee balm, you can go ahead and split those now. Now, here's one of the things about the flower garden that I want to be sure to get across. If you have any kind of a powdery mildew, any kind of a fungus, you want to get that growth out of the garden, out of your yard. And that goes also for in like cucumber trash or the tomato plant trash. Get that completely out of your yard and take it to the compost site, because that kind of thing actually will live in the compost pile, and then you'll just be having perpetuating the fungus or the mildew in your soil and into your plant life. So that would be it for 2019, and I hope that you've enjoyed what we've been able to put on here at the library. Do stop by and see if we have anything left, and I will see you next spring.